everyone. Welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers, seekers of happiness and joy, seekers of a centered approach to success in life, seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Hey, remember last week when I was on a plane and I sent you that text?
I do. That was awesome.
I'm headed off to vacation and all I'm doing is obsessively thinking about mental health.
Plus the text exchange was hilarious. Like sometimes we have major life altering texts in very few words.
Yeah, mixed
randomly
together with lots of just random memes and whatever.
Right.
But okay, so I got super kind of I don't know. I didn't buy internet on the plane this time. Usually, with the advent of internet on planes,
yeah.
I get into this. It used to be when I got on a plane,
yeah,
it was very disconnected time.
I know.
Right? I actually kind of miss that time.
I know, because it's not like that anymore.
Right, because now it's just so easy for me to just go buy the internet and jam out on work the entire flight. But this time I decided I'm not going to do that.
Right. And you were also on vacation with Amber, your lovely wife, just the two of you for the first time in several years. It was your time to really unplug.
18 years.
There you were.
18 years.
Okay,
yeah,
that's...
Isn't that crazy? We should do a podcast about that.
Yes, absolutely. Gosh.
So anyway, I found myself just sitting on the plane. I was reading a book, a philosophy book, and then
reading Socrates.
Well, that's not very far off. It was a book about Stoic philosophy.
Oh my gosh, JJ.
Called Discipline is Destiny. It's really good.
Oh my gosh, that sounds so relaxing.
I was very
Were you drinking
relaxed.
a fruity drink at the same time? Lord.
Okay, so I sent you a text, and
yep.
what it was I was thinking about how do you reframe mental health and therapy, because obviously we talk a lot about this. I try to talk about mental health a lot at my company.
Yeah.
But there is still a stigma around this idea that you would have to go get therapy.
Right. Oh, I know.
Right?
I know.
And it's as much as everyone wants to say, oh no, we value mental health, we're going to do that, when it comes down to it,
yeah,
it's still not a thing that people willingly lean into.
No.
Right?
Yeah, no, you're right. Except for if there's any population that's more open to it, it's the younger population, the 20-somethings. But even then, yeah, there's just so much
even
guilt
then, they
and
might not
shame.
actually talk about it until after it's worked.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, exactly. No one wants to say.
Yeah, I don't hear anyone, we're very kind of open at my company, and I hear lots of people saying, hey, I'm taking a break to go work out. I'm going to go to the grocery store. I'm going to go do all the, errands.
Life stuff.
Mm-hmm. Not a single time have I heard somebody say, hey, I got therapy at 1, so I'll see you guys a little bit.
Oh my gosh. You're right. Yeah. There's what is that about? Because it's always been like that.
It has to be, I don't know. It's got to be a shame thing. It's got to be I'm broken, so I
Something's
won't
wrong.
go do that. So I don't want to tell people that.
Yeah.
It's an internal private thing. I don't know. I will tell you, if I broke my leg and I needed to go to the doctor, I would tell everybody, I got to go to the doctor. I broke my leg.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
There's no shame in that.
Well, and that's a crisis situation. And if you said something like, I'm having problems with anything I eat for a really long time, doesn't feel good, and it's been building for a long time, I've got to go see a specialist.
Yeah.
So even in a crisis or non-crisis physical mode, you don't even think twice about going into a doctor.
Yep. But with this mental stuff, you totally do.
Yeah. I know.
So I was thinking, like, how do you reframe therapy and mental health? And what I was thinking about was, I was actually thinking about like the Pride movement,
Yeah.
right? So if we take I guess like an analog or a parallel, it's like in the in the 80s and the 90s, even probably into the 2000s a bit.
Yeah.
Like if you were homosexual, that was like not a thing you talked about, right? When we were growing up, that was kind of like,
Yeah. Taboo.
Don't talk about
Ooh,
that,
yeah.
right?
Look the
And
other
then
way. That's the thing. Look the
from
other way.
and then from like, I have no idea if this is true or not,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
my
You're
observation
speculating.
is something sort of happened in our culture that said, oh, actually, this is becoming okay, right? So, and then, but what I was trying to figure out, like, what flipped it? I'm sure there's a whole bunch of stuff that flipped it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But one of the things that I remember that flipped it was this idea of the flag, the gay pride, marches, this whole idea that we're building
Pride,
a
yeah.
brand around not being shameful of it, but being prideful of it.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that was someone's like purposeful, like maybe there's like a marketing genius behind this. I hope there is. It'd be great. But so, something flipped there where they flipped the script. I
Right.
say they, that I didn't,
I
but
know what you mean.
the society somehow
Yeah.
flipped the script, right?
Socially, it became more open. And I mean, it's not fully accepted now, but it is certainly more.
Much better.
Yeah. And much
I
more
hope.
available.
Actually, I hope. Like, I don't have the
Yeah.
experience of.
Yeah. Same.
I mean, I have some friends, but
yeah.
but I don't have personal experience of that. So I hope is a way better.
Yeah.
for
Well,
my
I mean,
friends.
certainly, even if you don't have the closeness to the topic, you can see it in news. You can see it in any of the like lots of social media posts where there's a lot more activity. There's a lot more social activity around it. The numbers have grown astronomically around this, and just using that as an example, I'm sure there's many other movements that if we sat and thought about it a little bit, we could come up with sort of
Totally.
the same
Yep.
thing. But I'm with you on this. I think that is like, and then when we were having lunch the other day, how we were talking about, even the self-awareness journey. I think that there's just a stigma around working on your own mental wellness. Like if you even look at our social media as a very little, just even as a little example, right? So we have a Facebook page, and that Facebook page gets activity, regular activity, people commenting on stuff, people sharing stuff, people checking in with place. Okay, then you look at LinkedIn, which is the exact same content that we're posting, and it is a fraction of the activity. We very seldom get activity on that LinkedIn page. There are quiet followers. So
Yeah.
every month we get several followers that click on it. But it's almost like, again, the difference between that personal and that business. So I feel like that's also a lag. It's like what you do in your personal life, even though people are talking about everything kind of merging together and with the pandemic and stuff like that, I still think it's
Nah.
lagging behind.
I agree. So here's my whole thesis. Ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Reframing mental health and therapy. So, question: how do we make therapy accessible to everyone? That was my question that I started thinking about.
Yep.
And so the problem is that people don't want to say they're going to therapy.
Yeah, right.
Simple.
Right.
They don't want to say
Yeah.
it. So my thesis is that everyone needs therapy and mental health support. And if everyone is able to work on their mental health, people would be happier, healthier, and the world would be a better place.
I like
Like
it.
grandiose like mission. So a solution to that would be, how do we rebrand therapy as mental fitness?
Yeah.
Because
I
think of
love
this
that.
idea, like if I'm at work and I just said, hey, I got to go meet my mental fitness coach for like an hour.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Just the small tweak in words makes it feel completely different.
Yeah. Can I
And
broaden this just a teeny bit before you
yeah,
keep going? I don't think we should just say, how do we make therapy available for everyone? I think a focus on mental wellness. So it can be a whole host of things within that. It doesn't necessarily mean a traditional therapy model, where it's like you go speak to someone for an hour. Like, I think really this movement is all around doing all the things that make you feel mentally well.
yep. I
So
agree.
sorry,
I
didn't
agree.
mean
It
to
should
wreck
be
your jam there,
broadened.
but I feel
No,
like
it's
we should
fine.
have that in there.
So, like, to me, like, kind of reframing it as mental fitness activities, like, changes it to be like proactive and growth seeking, and not with that stigma of like I need help or I'm broken in some way.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of things you can do from a personal development standpoint that can make you way happier, way more productive, effective, whatever you want to be kind of more of.
Yeah.
That's not like necessarily like I've had a crisis and I need recovery help.
Yeah.
But the idea that unless you have a crisis, you don't go
Right.
proactively work on your mental health.
And even if we change the
there's a gap.
vernacular to unless you have a crisis, even just like putting the cookies on the bottom shelf, as I'm always fond of saying, even if you're in a spot mentally where you absolutely just don't feel good at all, and it's been kind of a slow drive down the hill, where there's so much stigma, there's so much personal attachment to ego to admit it, not just to others, but to ourselves, right? And so I think then, how do we make that change inside of ourselves, where it's like we not even worrying about the validation of other people, but just within ourselves?
Yep.
How can we make it okay to just say, hey, I'm taking a class on memory right now, and I'm also taking a class on mental wellness right now,
Yeah.
like, or whatever.
I agree. So like in the world of like physical fitness, like if we could just use a lot of the same physical fitness words, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm going to get a workout. I'm
Yeah.
going to meet my personal trainer, right? Like,
I love that.
Like these words, if you applied them to like I'm going to meet my mental trainer,
Yeah.
going to meet my my mental fitness coach, I'm going to go, I'm going to go get a workout, like a mental workout,
Right.
and an emotional
exactly.
workout.
Yeah. I'm going to get a new outfit for it too, by the way, because that always makes me feel good in a workout. New shoes. That makes me mentally feel so awesome. I got to get new shoes for my mental workout.
So
Our emotional workout.
when I was, I wasn't super into like physically working out when I was younger, like
Yep.
maybe in my 20s, I guess, I don't know, too busy. But like in my 20s, I would have kind of like repetitive back problems. Like my lower back would kind of go out. If I slept on like, a mattress that wasn't mine, like if I slept at my in-laws or a hotel room or something, like my back would just get like super tight. And I always just thought like, oh, that's just what happens. Like it just go, sometimes I'd like lift stuff and it just kind of go out. But then the past few years, I started really working on like my core strength.
Yep.
Like I work out every week, like doing weightlifting. So like really intentionally trying to build those stronger muscles.
Yeah.
And since I've been doing that for the past like 4 years, never had a single back problem since.
Yeah. Oh, same
So,
applies here in this conversation. That's really interesting.
This idea that like I am doing physical wellness stuff in order to not have that problem, not have that back problem, you can see how it could like really easily apply to our mental health too, right?
Yeah,
Like if I'm
and emotional.
keeping up on
And emotional health.
yeah, if I'm keeping up on that part of myself,
Yeah.
then the likelihood that something might derail on me, I think probably goes down.
Yeah. How do we change? I wonder how we change. How do we start to And like, honestly, like even, was it last May that we were on the list of experts for the Minneapolis St. Paul Business Journal on mental health?
Oh yeah, you did that panel on mental health.
Yeah, that panel, right?
Yep.
And it was such a good conversation, and it was all that same. I mean, it was a lot of the same discussion here. And if you look at where we have moved from then until now, there's been very little movement about it. And actually, what's coming out more and more are all these studies and all these percentages of increased anxiety with young people. Suicide rates are increasing. People naturally feeling more anxious and nervous and stressed, taking themselves out of social situations. As a podcast, as the self-awareness journey,
Yep.
what do you think needs to happen for us to open up this idea of mental and emotional fitness?
Yeah.
What does that look like? Well, what should we do? Like start a movement? Like how do we do it?
Totally. Start a movement. Let's go, team. All the listeners, let's go. Well, that's a good question. I think like when we started, I was like, I'm so like always obsessed with marketing and how marketing can influence, customers' decisions and even society in different ways. But what do we do? That is a really good question.
Right. I think that it's a very real question. I don't think it's a theoretical question. I feel like we're doing a lot to help people have an awareness. And like you and I, like even in our conversations about the self-awareness journey, you very often will focus on the thoughts around self-awareness. And I am often mostly focused on the feelings of self-awareness and how these two come together to create this, this link. And it was funny because as we were talking about this, it's like, how do we bring this concept to the world? Like, how do we bring this concept to the world in a way that's very accessible and non-judgmental and not something that has to have people feeling embarrassed?
Yeah. Well, obviously, I'm going to start by drawing a really nice logo. Maybe a color palette.
We need a tagline.
Oh, maybe we need a mascot.
What would a mascot be for self-awareness?
The mental fitness mascot.
Oh my gosh, it'd be like a brain and a heart holding hands, like with something wrapped around them. I don't know.
All right, we'll workshop that. But I mean, maybe it is just part of what we are doing now, right? It's just part of having our listeners, share, this pod, other resources to their friends and colleagues, just slowly spreading the word, having the conversations, trying to get it to be less taboo.
I feel like, too, the number one thing that needs to happen is a real true evaluation of how you personally, each person listening, how you think about mental wellness, mental well-being, and emotional wellness, being more self-aware. I think it begins there. I think it begins there.
I think asking that questions of our amazing listeners is going to be a little bit skewed because everyone listening to this podcast already is into personal development and
or they're just Parker family members or friends of Melissa's. Sorry, Mrs. Parker, I wasn't being disrespectful.
Thousands of family members. I think it might be a little bit beyond that. But
okay, fine. Well, certainly people are curious. People may be curious, and they may be in this dialogue. You can listen to a podcast and not tell anybody what you're listening to. People are always really quick to say, I'm listening to this podcast on business, or I'm listening to podcasts on, how to work out better. Like, you hear people talking about the positive attitude podcasts, like, quite easily. And I would be curious how people talk about the self-awareness journey. Like, you and I were even saying at lunch the other day, it's like, gosh, if we were starting the self-awareness journey now, we probably wouldn't even call it that. You know, even though this is what it is, but just shifting it slightly to make it a more accessible title, that people feel excited to share. And I think people do. I don't mean to say that people don't feel excited about this. And I mean, we have wonderful supporters. It's absolutely fantastic. So, but it's just interesting to even think about us, like all of us that are together in this conversation. Yeah, you would think that we would have more reach. We would have more capacity to understand ourselves easily. And it's still hard. It's still hard. There's been a number of times we've said, hey, if you like this, can you please share this? Like we'd love to get our listener numbers up, and they are organically growing. But I haven't ever heard back like people saying, oh my gosh, this is so fun. I love to do this. I made everybody, I want everybody to know about this because it feels good to listen.
This sounds like it's really turning into like a task to our listeners. Like, hey, go share. Go share.
I don't mean it. I don't mean it that way, but I'm using it as an example, honestly.
Yeah. You're using it as an example because like there's so
we are
much
the ones that
other content that can grow fairly easily.
Yeah.
Yet we're like, like I showed you the other day, like we're in like the top 10% of Spotify content creators.
Yeah.
Right? Which seems, I mean, that sounds like impressive. Like we've made more content than 90% of the other podcast creators. Yet, right, this particular topic doesn't grow at the pace of other topics.
So is your suggestion that it's just because we haven't found a way to spin it? Or is your suggestion something different?
I don't know if I have a suggestion. I know you think I'm coming loaded with notes and research here, but we're just really spitballing at this
as our
point
indicator.
I think it's probably a mix of things. I do think that as much as we try, there still is a little bit of hesitation and taboo around the topic that both you and I love. So
you know what you know what I do? I look towards the 20-somethings to help us out of this mess. On my LinkedIn recently, I posted a Simon Sinek video. It was a 5-minute video in which he was talking about the younger generation in the workplace. And it was fascinating because he started out just sort of describing what it is, what it feels like, this opposing views of what the workplace, quote, should be.
Okay.
And it was super interesting because he said, in the older generation, 40s, 50s generation, you got your place of community through your church. You got your sense of social through the bowling club. You got your work through work. And today, he said, the younger generation
is described like a very 50s version of reality.
Yeah, but he was describing that's what it was. And for the younger generation, though, they expect their workplace to be all of those things. They expect it to be their social place. They expect it to have their emotional connections there. They expect to have work there. And then you add all of this trauma that's happening in this world. This stuff just keeps coming one after the next. War, politics, pandemic, etc. They're not equipped. And so his whole conversation was, we have to give them space so that they can catch up. That was his whole thesis. And I was like, wow, I'm really interested in what people think. So I threw it up on LinkedIn. And I got a few comments that were super interesting. There were some that were very in alignment with this. And then there was one that was like, yes, and everybody has to be more accountable. And it was like this kind of hammer down on this is what it should be. That's wrong. That's not how it has to be. It should be this way, the old school way. But it's really interesting because not a lot of people besides that wanted to weigh in. So then I took a sampling of 4 20-somethings that I know. And I asked them, would you please watch this and weigh in? Do you know that I got instantly about 2 paragraphs from each one of them talking about the challenges that we have being able to be more authentic with expectations and what they're supposed to do with those expectations. And being healthy means being able to take care of their own mental well-being. And if they're not doing that, then that's on them. It was just a really interesting dialogue. So I do really believe that there's something generationally in here ready to crack open and create a new thing. And I feel very, very confident that our 20-somethings, honestly, are going to be the ones that help us through this. I really believe that.
Yeah, I am also optimistic for the younger generation.
Oh, man, now I'm going to go put my teeth in a glass for the rest of the day. Oh, my goodness gracious.
All right, well, I don't think we solved the world's problems today, but it was kind of fun to think through this and think about framing. How do we frame, or how would we put different frames around things that are taboo or we don't like talking about, and maybe reframing sometimes is the key to making them more acceptable.
Yeah, I think that's really, really an interesting thing to think about. And then Simon ended that whole little segment by just saying, we're going to be here for a little while. It's going to take us a while to figure this out. And I appreciated that perspective because I think that that's true. But it will take a little while, and then stuff like this. These kinds of conversations help happening in a social way without judgment, but observation instead. And I think that's a huge key for us too, as we're thinking these things through, and as you and I have talked, how people are responding to this conversation. Are they judging, feeling angry, feeling disappointed, feeling disconnected, not in agreement? Are they feeling hugely in agreement and sad because they don't know what to do? I think can we just be where we are in observation and continue to advocate for mental fitness? Because that's really what we are moving towards.
Yep. Well, let's keep marching.
Let's keep talking. We'll keep talking about it.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.